You wake up and your leg does not work. No doctor is coming, no hospital is down the road, just you, your pain, and the people around your fire. For most of human history, this was not a rare tragedy. This was a normal Tuesday. You might assume the answer is simple. Weak got left behind, sick got abandoned, survival of the fittest, and nothing else. That is the story most people carry around in their heads without ever questioning it. But the bones tell a very different story. In 1957, archaeologists digging in Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq uncovered the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who lived roughly 45,000 years ago. Researchers call him Shanidar 1. His right arm had been amputated below the elbow. He was blind in one eye. He had a limp that would have made walking painful and slow. And yet he lived for years after these injuries, well into what counted as old age for his time. Think about that for a second. A one-armed, partially blind man survived in an Ice Age landscape full of predators with no modern medicine for years. He could not hunt effectively. He could not defend himself well. Someone was feeding him. Someone was protecting him. Someone decided his life was worth the cost of caring for him. This is not an isolated case. Anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus, who studied the Shanidar remains extensively, found similar patterns across multiple Neanderthal skeletons. Broken bones that healed. Missing teeth that did not stop someone from eating. Injuries so severe that without help, death would have come almost immediately. Instead, these individuals lived on. So, how do you explain that? If survival only rewarded the strong, none of this should exist. But your ancestors were not running on cold calculation alone. They were running on something else. Something that predates written language, predates agriculture, predates almost everything we call civilization. They were running on care. Bioarchaeologist Lorna Tilley developed a framework called the bioarchaeology of care to study exactly this pattern. In plain English, it means looking at ancient skeletons for signs that a sick or injured person could not have survived without sustained help from others, and then asking what that help says about the group. Tilley's work shows this pattern shows up again and again across different times, different continents, different species of humans entirely. One of the clearest examples comes from a very different place. Windover Pond in Florida, a burial site dating back around 7,000 years, preserved dozens of skeletons in remarkable condition thanks to the unique chemistry of the peat bog. Among them, archaeologists led by Glenn Doran found the remains of a child with spina bifida, a condition where the spine does not close properly during development. In plain English, this child would have had limited use of his legs from birth. He could not have hunted. He could not have gathered food on his own. And yet the skeletal evidence shows he lived to around age 15. 15 years. Fed, protected, and kept alive by a community with no medicine as we know it, no wheelchairs, no modern infrastructure of any kind. Just people who decided that this particular life mattered enough to sustain. Now, picture it. Picture the scene at Windover, thousands of years ago. The sun is low over the marsh. Smoke rises from a cluster of fires. A boy who cannot walk sits near the center of camp. Not at the edge, not forgotten. Someone brings him fish. Someone else adjusts a woven mat beneath him so the ground does not bite into his skin. Children run past him, and he is part of their world, not separate from it. This was not an act of pity. It was an act of belonging. Here is the counterintuitive twist. You might think that as human societies grew larger and more organized, care for the sick and disabled would improve. More resources, more specialization, surely more compassion. But the archaeological and anthropological record suggests something almost the opposite happened at key points in history. Small, mobile hunter-gatherer groups, the kind humans lived in for the vast majority of our existence, often show remarkably consistent evidence of caring for the sick and injured. Everyone was known. Everyone was visible. There was nowhere to disappear. Once agriculture arrived roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, populations grew, hierarchies formed, and something shifted. Larger societies could produce more surplus, but that surplus was not always shared evenly. Anthropologist James Sussman, who has spent decades studying the Jew, Hoanzi people of the Kalahari, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies, has documented how tightly these small groups share food and resources, precisely because everyone's survival is visibly tied to everyone else's. In a band of 20 or 30 people, letting someone starve is not an abstraction. It happens in front of you. It happens to someone whose face you know. Bigger societies made suffering easier to look away from, not because people became crueler, but because distance became possible for the first time. You could live in a city and never see the person starving 3 streets over. Care did not disappear. It just stopped being automatic. This matters for you today in a way that might feel uncomfortable. Your instinct to help someone who is struggling, to check on a sick friend, to feel a pull of guilt when you scroll past someone in need, that instinct is not a modern invention layered on top of a selfish animal core. It is ancient. It is one of the oldest parts of what makes you human at all. The one-armed man in Shanidar Cave and the boy in the Florida marsh are proof that this instinct is written into the deepest layers of your species' history. But here is the harder truth hiding underneath the comforting one. That instinct only works when people are close enough to see each other. Your ancestors did not have grand philosophies about universal compassion. They had proximity. They saw the person suffering. They knew their name. They had eaten beside them the night before. Modern life gives you the opposite. It gives you distance, dressed up as connection. You can know about suffering on the other side of the planet in real time, yet feel nothing, while the person next door goes unnoticed for weeks. So the question is not really whether you have the capacity to care. The bones already answered that. The question is whether you are willing to close the distance, whether you are willing to actually see the people around you the way a small band of hunter-gatherers saw each other, not as strangers passing through your field of vision, but as people whose survival was quietly, permanently tied to your own. You wake up and your leg does not work. Thousands of years ago, that sentence did not end in abandonment. It ended in someone bringing you food, someone adjusting the mat beneath you, someone deciding, without ever saying it out loud, that you were still one of them.